As a result of the economic crisis of 1958 and the rise of the small compact European cars flooding the USA at the start of the 60s, American car makers reacted by developing and offering their own homegrown attempts at a compact car. That's American compactness. Ford introduced the Falcon in 1960, a small, affordable and honest car and quite successful. It was built on the idea of the traditional large American land yacht experience, but slightly smaller. And so Ford also introduced the Falcon in Canada, but the Canadian car market is a bit different than the US. Since Canada is part of the Commonwealth of Nations, along with a few traces of French colonial history, American cars had to share the Canadian roads with various cars coming from the UK and France. In other words, European cars were more common here than in the US, so naturally competition was a bit more fierce. But then there was also a unique dealer structure that differed from the US. This is a long and confusing story I've explained before, but it comes down to this. When it comes to Ford's line of brands in the US, you had the lower-priced Ford, mid-priced Mercury, and luxury Lincoln, although we skipped that for this episode. But in Canada, both these brands had a companion brand as a replacement. So instead of a Ford Mercury dealer, you had Ford Monarch, where Monarch was the replacement of Mercury. And so you also had Mercury Ford. And instead of Mercury Ford, you had Mercury-Meteor, where Meteor was the replacement of Ford. Please don't ask me why, what, when, how, where, or who thought that this was going to be a good idea. It just happened. Anywho, with the introduction of the Falcon, that faced Ford of Canada with a problem, because the Falcon went straight to the Ford Monarch dealers and was sold as the Ford Falcon, just like the US, no problem. But now the Mercury-Meteor dealers were left without a car. Ford could have chosen to sell the car as a rebadged Meteor Falcon, but none of that, because of course, why wouldn't you have to make it more complicated? Introducing Frontenac, Canada's one-year wonder. Instead of what I just said, selling the Falcon as a Meteor Falcon or a Meteor Frontenac, Ford decided to make it a separate brand out of it. So, just Frontenac. When you walked into a dealership in Canada, you had Mercury, Meteor, and Frontenac for sale. What do you drive these days? I drive a Frontenac. Is it a Ford? Is it a Mercury? Nope, it's a Frontenac. You get it. So how do you know when you deal with a Falcon and when you deal with a Frontenac? Well, the Frontenac is simply a Falcon with more chrome. And that seems to be a recurring theme in the Canadian car market. The various Meteors and Monarchs featured even more shiny metal than their already chrome-loving American cousins, like the Meteor Rideau, which is a Canadian version of the Ford Fairlane. From the side, the Frontenac features 3 little chrome pieces on the rear quarter panel and a special emblem on the front fender. On the rear, the taillights were smaller. Instead of full round glass taillights, they shrunk and were surrounded by extra chrome trim. But it's the front end that takes the cake. The car looked a bit more upscale compared to the plain Jane Falcon, as it had a split grille design theme with a round chrome centerpiece and 2 chrome bars sticking out of it. Kinda looked like an airplane propeller from a distance. And just above, the Frontenac name was written out in full. In order to further distinguish the Frontenac from the Falcon, Ford of Canada went on this crusade to present it as the ultimate genuine Canadian car. How did it do it? The name Frontenac comes from Louis Dubois de Frontenac, a 17th century governor of the then New France colony, and more locations in Canada are named after him. Also, the vice president of Ford of Canada proudly proclaimed that this wasn't just a stopgap for a lack of a compact car in the company's lineup, but a genuine attempt to respond to the alleged growing interest among Canadians to own a distinctively Canadian car. Right, this is what you send in, a warmed-over American compact. To further fool Canadians, all it took was to sprinkle lots of maple leaves around. That'll get them. The car features various badges that show a maple leaf. And here's where it gets interesting when you realize the maple leaf wasn't yet put on the national flag of Canada, which happened only a few years later. But it was already considered a national symbol. And if that wasn't enough, there was one final thing that really won the Canadians over, which was the spacious back seat, because
back seats, your Canadians, they're going to be fairly chipper back there. It's wide. This car is really wide. You can fit 3 of them, even fat guys back there, no problem.
But that's it. Underneath it was all the same as the Falcon. Same suspension, same brakes, same interior, same colors for the interior and exterior, and the same engine, which was a modestly sized 2.4-liter thrift power straight 6, making 95 horsepower. Even the optional equipment is virtually the same. I read and compared both the brochure of the Falcon and the brochure of the Frontenac, and they're virtually the same. Copy the Falcon brochure, change the name to Frontenac, et voila! It certainly gives a new meaning to the term copywriter. Despite all this, both the Falcon and the Frontenac sold quite well in Canada for the first year, 1960. About 9,500 Frontenacs were sold against 17,000 Falcons. Both cars certainly gained a noticeable market share that year. So, despite the confusion, the car is a success. So much even that Ford worked on an update for the next year, and here's a picture. It shows the same basic car but with a slightly reworked grille. The story goes the car was driven from Halifax to Vancouver for a photo shoot, only to find out upon arrival that upper management decided to add another layer of confusion. The Frontenac brand was discontinued, so before the new car could ever be photographed, it was already gone. After operating for 1 year, selling an overchromed Falcon and nothing else, the brand was scrapped. Its replacement? Something that was just as confusing. Frontenac became Comet. And the exact same story unfolds again for 1961. The Comet was a single brand with a single car for a single year. The Comet was a bastard child of the failed Edsel experiment. It was supposed to be an up-and-coming compact car for the Edsel division, and here's a spy shot from the styling studio. But when the brand was cancelled, the car became an orphan. The solution? Another 1-year wonder. Imagine walking into a Canadian dealership in 1961 and the following scene unfolds. Yes, hello. I'd like to buy one of those fine Falcons I heard so much about. Welcome. Well, that wouldn't be a Falcon. That's a Ford Monarch dealer exclusive. We are a Mercury-Meteor dealer and only sell Frontenacs. Right. Frontenac. Sure, I'll get one of those. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but we no longer sell those. The Frontenac is crap, but we do have a Comet. What the hell is a Comet? It's essentially a thrown-away Edsel. That's it. I'm going to get me a Cover. The following year, 1962, the confusion was put to rest. The Comet was finally added to the Mercury lineup, so when you walked into a Mercury-Meteor dealership, you could buy a Mercury Comet, as a Meteor Comet sounds a bit ambiguous. In the meantime, however, the Falcon just soldiered on as a Ford. But this puts an end to Canada's most Canadian car, the Frontenac. If you wish to know more about the Canadian car industry and its very weird dealership structuring, click the video in the top left. If you wish to know more about the failed Edsel brand and the whole Edsel Comet story, click the video in the bottom left. If you want to watch more Did You Know short stories, then click the playlist on the right.